So a few years ago, I started working with Dave. Sorry about that. I thought my slides were out of order. And despite his business being much more virtual, which is, I think, what a lot of you guys are more in virtual businesses. Some of you might have retail stores. I started to come in and I could start seeing the fires with Dave. I started to recognize where things were actually going wrong. And the more I spotted, the more I would say, hey, Dave, we need to sort of start fixing these things, because he never intended to start Melbourne SEO services to be trapped by it. Don't think any business owner starts a business to lose their freedom. They don't, do they? You think you're doing it because you want more of it, more freedom. So Dave had gotten this business to a point, but he just couldn't do it alone anymore. You're going through these stages as an entrepreneur, and you think you can do it all because you've done it so far, all on your own. But there comes a point where you need somebody to help you. So the first things first, we had to do a bit of a review with Melbourne SEO. There's a couple of really, well, not just a couple, there were quite a lot of pros with Dave's business, but I'll only say two because we don't have all day. But two of the big pros with Melbourne SEO was he had a great team, has a great team, very talented. Dave's hiring system was really good. He was able to spot talent, put them through the funnel, and get them on the team. Another thing is marketing. He had a fantastic lead flow, sales always coming in. And how many of you know good staff and good lead flow, like those are, woo, holy grail, right, of a business. But at the same time, he had a few things that were holding his business back. And one of them, I'm sure you guys are probably familiar with this, the ideas man or woman running the show. How are you meant to be at the helm of your ship, scoping out new territory, finding out where the new land is, if every 5 minutes you're running under the deck to help your team plug holes together, keep the sails up, or whatever else they do on ships? You can't do it. And another thing was that I spotted was there was very loose structures. He had structures and systems, but they were a bit blurry, kind of fuzzy here and fuzzy there. So Dave, at this point, I could say, and he had talked about the stages of entrepreneurship before, the 4 stages, we've got the startup, the proven, the systematic, and the complete. Dave was like dancing on level 3. Like, I've got a few systems, call me a systematic entrepreneur, I'm at level 3. He was in that space where probably a lot of you are, between level 2 and level 3, trying to go, I want to get to 4 so bad. Give me to 4, I want a beach picture of my toes and tweet it out to my followers and go, look at me, But he wasn't quite there yet. So that's what I do. That's what systems do. That's what that kind of mind does. It pushes you from when you had that wonderful idea so many years ago, started up your business, got passionate about it, went to number 2, hired people, made sales, did your stuff. Then you stand at number 2 for so long because you forget an important piece of the component. So you need somebody or something to help you automate, systemate, and implement systems so you can move in through stage 3 and into stage 4. So let me give you some of the goss on Dave, hey? Number 1 fire that we spotted with Dave, well, I spotted with Dave. You all probably would know. Unclear communication, right? I'm sure you all have had this happening in your day, right? Dave had so many things going on, so much happening. I used to call it his rapid fire. He had this rapid fire way of communicating with staff. Yeah, okay. Okay, and then he's off to a podcast or a meeting or a webinar or doing the next thing, and the staff are stunned. We're just, okay, all right, we think we know what he's talking about. We think we know what he's doing. But, oh. There we go, off a Slack. How did we go backwards? Sorry about that. So because the internal communication was scattered, it was unclear, it didn't make a whole lot of sense. And maybe you guys are experiencing a little bit of this in your own business. You think you know what the message is, and I told my staff that. And then they went off and went the complete opposite direction, and you wonder why. That's huge. Internal communication is massive. So that was fire number 1 with Dave's business. Fire number 2. Dave, I'm sure you have all realized this at some point, is a super nice guy. Yeah? He wants to help everybody. Clients would come to him and say, oh, I've got this problem, Dave, da-da-da, and Dave's like, listen, I'll help. I'll do it. It's good. And he's like, I don't know how we're going to do it, but we're going to do it. We're just going to somehow do it. And because he was always helping people, he was like Superman coming to the rescue, right? Every service was a little bit different. So the deliverables were always a little bit different. You know how hard it is to systematize and automate something that's always different for a different client? That's really hard. It's not impossible, but it is hard. So we had to get clear on the systems. And another thing with that, when you have different systems, or not systems, if we have different services and products that aren't clearly defined, I think that puts a really unrealistic expectation on your staff, no matter how good they are. If your outcome's always going to be different because your service is always different, you can't possibly expect your staff member or members to deliver all the time because it's a different product. So, fire number 3. I like the giggle from the back of the room. Disorganization. Now, Dave had the beginnings of systems. They were here and here and there, right? But no clear place to put them. Some of them were unthought, not all the way thought all the way through. Some of them were really, really spot on and good. But you realize when you don't have a well-organized place to put your systems are all well and fine, right? You can document and put all cool little charts and arrows and lines and squares and circles and all that stuff, right? You can get all that done, but unless your team know where to go to find it and then implement it, what's the point of a system? You spend half your time trying to find it, and then once you find it, we're in volume 2. I don't know. So disorganization, clearly a problem for the business. Fire number 4, lack of training. Like I said, Dave had beginnings of systems in place, but they weren't all congruent. They didn't all flow properly. So that meant that each staff member, no matter how good they are, they were trained differently. So some person was like, I know what the company policies are. Other person's like, I don't. And when you don't have everyone trained the same way, how can you have the expectation of them, right? It's difficult when each team member is trained in a different manner. It creates a very negative and bad working environment because people aren't on the same playing field. Everyone's at a different level from the other. So there was no easy work references because there was a lack of training. People weren't sure exactly where the parameters were. And I think you all know with staff, if the lines are blurry, they kind of push right through it, don't they? They never said anything about taking the 3rd Saturday off on a 2nd month of the year on a full moon, right? They can find a loophole. So having your training, onboarding and offboarding is very important. So Dave, we needed to help him fix this up. And I also want to just point out, this is something I find really important because I've talked to a lot of business owners, and they always, number one thing business owners come to me and they, oh, my staff, oh, they upset me so much, right? And why? They never do the right thing. I tell them this. They never do it. I've trained them. I've told them, how did you train them? Oh, when I hired them, they followed me around for a day. Having a staff member fully trained is so valuable to you. You must remember they are not you. They are not the entrepreneur. They are not the business owner. They don't see your vision. They are a cog in the piece. They don't know the bigger picture unless you train them right from the beginning. You can't hold an expectation of a gun if their training was following you around for the day. Or read the manual, look at it later. So that was another area we needed to really get firm up on. Number 5. How many are guilty of this? Yeah, micromanagement. And I get that, totally get that. I do not blame Dave for being a micromanager. Did you see the organization that he had before, right? The loose staff training, the spinning of plates. How else are you going to get things done as an entrepreneur unless you make sure it's done, right? So micromanagement was huge, but something I want to remind you, and I remember chatting with Dave about this, when you micromanage, not only Does it steal your time away? But it disempowers your staff. You make them feel so inadequate at what they do when you micromanage, they just stop doing it. And then what's going to happen? Oh, they're shucking staff. Oh, but get somebody else new. And then it's going to repeat itself over and over and over again because you're not realizing where the missing pieces are. You think it's the staff. Sometimes it is. Sometimes you just get a bad apple in the bunch, right? But a lot of times it has to do with your training. And a lot of times it has to do with empowering your staff. And another thing, micromanagement, for those of you who do it, I think you all know, it's made you a slave to your business. You spend way too much time doing everybody else's stuff that you end up spending the evenings and your weekends doing the things that you were meant to be doing. Promise this is the last fire. So we have all of these things coming into place. So much micromanaging that was happening. Guess who broke all the rules? I see some staff laughing at the back. But because you're micromanaging, you're doing your staff's job. You're getting so frustrated because you're like, oh, just give it to me, I can do it quicker. And I have people tell me that. It is so much easier for me to go and do it myself because I'll get it done in like 2 minutes than to sit down, document, train, explain. So you just do it yourself. So I have to ask you then, if you're doing all of these, if you have identified with one or more of these fires, why are you in business? Go get a job. You're just making life harder on yourself. So, Dave's right about there, in that fire. Clearly, it's time to put that fire out. So everyone, you've got workbooks in front of you. I'd like to see if you can list down right now in your business. Perhaps you can take some inspiration from Dave's fires. What fires can you easily spot in your business right now? Have a think about that. Are you micromanaging your staff? Do you not have clear training for your staff? Staff always doing the wrong thing? Just have a bit of a think, write that down. So maybe wrap up some of those ideas. It's actually really important to write down the areas that you need systems in, because that's kind of the beginning of your sort of very first system, is working out which systems you need to do.